I am happy to have Automotive Seminars as a sponsor for the show. Now, if you're not familiar, Automotive Seminars is a diagnostic technician training company. They've got a website that there'll be a link to in the show notes. And what they offer is top-notch training to technicians like us in the field. I've been taking their training courses for years and have got a ton of benefit out of it. They've got top-notch instructors, John Thornton, Scott Shotton, Scott Manna, and every other month they've got a 2-night course that you can sign up for. Join in, ask questions, and afterwards, you've paid for the course, you can access a recorded version whenever you want. You can rewatch the class 2 years later in case you wanted some details on it, and that is a fantastic feature. So make sure to check out the website to see what courses they have available and what's coming up in the future. This podcast is brought to you by Jarhead Diagnostics. Jarhead Diagnostics manufactures in-house diagnostic equipment and storage solutions, as well as distributes for companies like Pico, ATS, and TopDon. One of my favorite tools that I've bought from Brandon and Jarhead Diag is the case for the U-Scope. If you don't have a U-Scope, you probably should, but if you have one, you got to get one of these 3D printed cases, has a magnet on it, has a full-size BNC lead that you can connect to, and it gets rid of the weak point of that scope, which is the mini BNC connection, which is pretty fragile. This case makes this thing nice and secure and makes it an even better tool than it was. So check out jarheaddiag.com. The link is in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by L1 Automotive Training and Keith Perkins. If you're looking for education on module programming, J2534, EEPROM work, key and immobilizer, electrical diagnostics, or drivability diagnostics, Keith has a website, l1training.com, that's got over 60 hours of training videos on all those subjects and more. When I first started out doing mobile, I utilized Keith's videos on module programming in J2534 in order to get my head wrapped around what I would need for the tooling, the computers, the software setups, what kind of obstacles I would be up against when I'm out there programming modules on cars. And it was a huge benefit to me. And I continue to use the training videos that he has on his website. So I strongly recommend checking out l1training.com. We have got Auto Rescue Tools and Isaac Rodell as a sponsor for this podcast. Hey guys, if you're looking for programming laptops, you want the laptop set up ready to go for programming control modules on vehicles, you need key cutting equipment, you need diagnostic tools, Isaac is your guy. Has all that stuff available for purchase, and the support that he offers along with the purchase has been outstanding. I bought some stuff from him in the past. I got my Dolphin key cutting tool from him several years back. And again, the support has been phenomenal. Helped me out along the way with anything additional I needed to make it work for me. Also, for the month of June 2023, they've got Autel updates for sale. So make sure to check that out as well. Again, that's autorescuetools.com. The link will be in the show notes. Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hey, what's going on, automotive world? Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping, and I will be your host. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the show. Today, I'm going to talk with Matthew Skundrich, and we're going to talk about some of the recent changes with NASTF and VSP credentials, and we'll get into not only exactly, what NASTF's role in the VSP credential is, what a VSP credential is, what's it take to get one,
what do you need it for, and some of the new changes that are coming up with recent things that have been put out there. Really, really informative. I really enjoyed this talk. I learned a lot. I mean, I tend to learn a lot when I talk to anybody on this podcast, but especially Matt. He's got just a crazy amount of knowledge on this subject and a whole bunch of others. But we'll get into it here. Just as a warning, we did have a little bit of an audio delay. It's my internet for sure. I had a tree fall down on the internet cables going to my house, and it's been a little glitchy. But anyways, we made it through it pretty well. Just wanted to let you know if we're talking over each other at any point, that's why. But other than that, we'll get right into the episode. There we go.
All right. So yeah, I'm over COVID.
Okay.
The wife got it 5 days after I got it, and I was very excited she got it because she banned me to the bedroom until somebody else got it, because she was trying to avoid everybody else getting it. And let me tell you, 5 days of being in the bedroom alone, I was bored.
Yeah, no kidding.
My wife's over there doing the cry me a river face. She has no idea how bad it was. I watched all the Marvel movies in chronological order by myself.
Holy
on my
cow.
crappy laptop. Yeah, that's how much free time I had.
Which one's the first one in chronological order?
It's weird. I don't even remember. I want to say it was still Iron Man, like the first Iron Man.
Okay. So that was probably
and then it's like, yeah, it's a weird order. It's like Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2. Then there's a break for Iron Man 3. And what I found really interesting about the whole thing, because I had no life for 5 days, was that the Hulk is not, even though it's a Marvel movie, Universal owns the rights to the Hulk. Kind of like Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man.
Sure.
And so Disney Plus can't show the Hulk. So I had to rent the Hulk for $2.99 off Amazon so I could watch it.
Which one did you rent though?
Because but I'm like, whatever.
They had 2 Hulk movies, right?
All right, technically 3.
Okay.
Because they did 2 years ago when like Universal Studios first came out. So we're talking, 2001, and there was 2 of those. There was a 1 and a 2. It was supposed to be a trilogy and never made the 3. Then in 2013, they redid it again, and they kind of fit it into with the Marvel universe. And that's the one that's got the newest one's the one that's got the military guy who becomes like the Rhino, and it's the bad guy. And it was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have given that guy the drugs. That was a bad idea. Now the Hulk's got to beat this guy up. So, yeah.
Yeah,
but
somebody makes a really stupid decision in those movies.
I'm like, these movies should just be called How Not to Do Things. But that's what I did. And then I wrote an article for a magazine, which, bless my wife's poor heart. I mean, she had to edit it, and she read a sentence out loud and looked at me with like 3 heads. And I was like, that's actually a correct sentence. And she's like, it doesn't even make any sense. There's like 4 accurate. I'm like, just leave it alone and move on. Leave it and move on. And so that's what we did. And then I kid you not, the technical writer, she wrote me, and she's like, this sentence makes no sense. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told my wife. Leave it and move on.
Okay, so you have your wife edit stuff for you as well.
Oh, yeah. And then I sent it to a couple buddies in the industry just to get their opinions. And one of them sent it back like 4 days after it was due. And it is the most brilliant editing job I've ever seen in my life. So that guy is now getting all my papers after my wife fixes them grammatically. Because I'll type like a whole sentence and there's words missing. She'll be like, read this sentence, and I'll read it, and I read the words there. And she's like, that word's not even in there. I'm like, oh, sorry. So, yeah. For a kid with a Bible degree, I have pretty bad grammatical skills.
Yeah, it's not my strong suit either. Being a teacher, I feel like I should be better at that stuff. 'Cause sometimes maybe I got to write on the whiteboard or something like that. I'm like, shit, I don't know how to spell that word. It's just, I was a technician for a long time. It's not my thing. I used to work with a guy who he'd write up his work orders and stuff, and he would obviously poor spelling or can't even read the word, and the service writers would give him crap about it, like, can't you make this more legible? And he'd look at him, he'd be like, yeah, I gave up being an English major to be a technician, what do you want to do about it? And that was always his answer for that. So that's what I tell my students too. I was like, yeah, I gave up being an English major, so what are you gonna do?
That's funny. Yeah, when I had to write 10-page papers every week for Bible college, it was like, oh, here's another one. But I was very fortunate. I have a friend of mine who liked to edit papers, apparently, for me. And so he would edit them. But then he'd also, like, challenge my theology or anything in the paper. He's like, well, I disagree with this. Can you prove why it's right? And I'm like, fine, we can have a discussion about it since you're being kind enough to edit these papers. But it's turned into like a long friendship now. I mean, I've known him for ever, it seems, and he's like my second dad. So it's fun now how things start and move about from little things like that.
Well, it's good to have somebody that'll actually question you and challenge you from time to time too. It's actually a positive thing that not everybody realizes how good it is to have somebody question what you're doing or what you're thinking. It can really work out in your benefit in the long run.
Just listen, if you want to be questioned about every decision you ever make or any test you want to do on a car, just become a mobile technician. Because when you pull up to that shop and you say, hey, I'm going to start with checking fuses, first words out of their mouth, and I'll bet you $20 on it. Don't worry, I already checked them. And then the next words out of my mouth are, well, did you check to make sure they were all installed? And there's usually a blank stare on their face when I leave and hand them a $150 bill for installing a fuse.
Yep. Well, hey, that's kind of along the lines of what we want to talk about today. There's some stuff going on with VSP credentials, NASTF, some stuff that's going around, and some people are worked up about it. But what I thought would be a good idea was to get somebody on here who knows this stuff very well. That'd be you. And we'll just put out some information, get out some facts, maybe put some opinions, our viewpoints to what's going on, and we can run through it here. But I thought we'd go through some basics first, right? Just to cover what's what in case anybody listening is not familiar with what we're talking about here. And we'll start off with the VSP, or I think what used to be called the LSID, and maybe we just walk through what that is, and then we can move on from there.
Yeah, so they did recently change it. It used to be LSI or LISD, locksmith LSID, yeah, locksmith identification. And it was mainly geared towards locksmiths, right? Like if you needed to cut a key and you wanted a key code, that's how you got it. Well, then as cars got more complex, we had to do security and modules more, and then more and more modules got more and more security. We'll talk about that later, but then NASTF decided that we should not just call it a locksmith ID because these guys are no longer just locksmith. We should call it a vehicle security professional. So the name has changed, but it still gives you some of the same features, but we've gained some things as technology has moved along. So yeah, I mean, I did not have my LSID when I first started my business. And that was 6.5 years ago. 5.5 years ago. I'm on year 6. So 5.5 years ago, and I didn't need it at the time, and it didn't dawn on me to really get it. So I didn't. I actually think I got it about 3 years ago, and Ford was what pushed me to go get it, and we'll get into that later on in detail. But so this is something newer for the automotive technicians that may not know that cars are going to require this to do certain things. Now, I need it because I'm working on 2021s already. I've already done one Mach-E, which that car's pretty sweet. I kind of want one now. I wish it was like Ford Explorer size because I'd totally trade my wife's ST Explorer in for Mach-E. But I'm working on 2021s already, so I have to have the latest and greatest. So it's kind of weird when you're mobile and you work at some of these body shops or some of the dealers call you because you have to have certain things on them. And that's where this VSP has come in to play, is at that dealer. Now, in case you're wondering, to get the VSP, it is a lengthy process. They have changed NASTF has changed their website. They've updated it. I know people now getting approved within a week of applying, where when I applied, it was like, oh, we'll get back to you in 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm like, oh, it's going to take a while.
Yeah, mine was about the same.
So, yeah. But when the NASTF, I don't know how to say it. It's too late. When they updated to SDRM 2.0 and it went all web-based, because if you remember, you and I got this paperwork, you filled it out by hand, you took pictures of it, you emailed it in, right? Well, now you just fill it all out online. It's one form. It's boom, boom, done. They really did streamline the process with SDRM 2.0. I mean, they get a lot of flack for doing some things wrong. I thought SDRM 2.0 was a little weird in the beginning, but their application process is super streamlined now. I had a buddy, literally, he got his in a couple days. So
wow.
if your ducks are in a row, and these are the ducks you got to have in a row, I made a list so we can go through them. The first one, it's the biggest, and it's what kills most of the people in our automotive industry, is a background check. I tried to do some more research on this, but the information's a little shaky to find, and I didn't feel like emailing them because they're getting bombarded with questions, and I knew I wouldn't get an answer by the time we were filming this or recording this. But I believe it's no theft-related crimes or felonies for 8 years. And to me, this is a big killer in the automotive industry because I don't want to call us a second chance industry, but it sure seems like there's a lot of guys who learn to work on cars in prison, they get out, and then they come here. So this is a big killer to a lot of guys who maybe screwed up 7 years ago. And there's some crimes, if you do them, I want to say it's grand theft or something. There's a couple crimes that if you commit them, I don't care if you did it 40 years ago, if it's on your record, you can never get an LSID.
Okay.
So if these guys own a shop, they can't get it because of what happened 30 years ago, right? So you got to pass a background check. Next, you got to have a commercial general liability insurance with a $1 million policy coverage and $500,000 per incident. Now, if you don't have it, it's not a big deal. NASTF has like links to where you can buy an insurance, and that insurance agent knows exactly what you need. It's kind of like it's a nationwide insurance because there's rules and laws regulating who can sell insurance in what state and blah, 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 blah. But it's weird. You can get it from them, so it's not a big deal. But most shops have that. I mean, if you have a shop, you have $1 million policy. The next thing you need is a driver's license. So if you don't have a driver's license, you can't get an LSID. You need a proof of business. So basically, I just send them a copy of my LLC documentation I get every year when I renew. The next one's kind of weird. They want a business card or a letterhead. They basically just go, okay, well, you have this business license, but do you have a business card that shows your name with the business? Because they want to make sure like you're really working for this business. It's not like you just own it and you're never there. So whatever, right? It's easy enough to do. And then the next one is they want a locksmith license or an auto repair license if required by your state. This one's a little weird to me because like not all my counties in Florida require a locksmith license. Some of them do, but then like I don't need an automotive repair license because I'm not actually fixing cars. I'm more of like an automotive consultant is what they registered me as with my state. So it became weird in itself. And so this one, that requirement of the license for either locksmith or automotive really depends on what you're doing, more so than it's super strict. Then you're going to need your EIN. If you own a business, you know what an EIN is. That's your fun tax document stuff. And then the last thing is you need 2 professional references that are not family. And then on top of all this, you get to pay $475, I think. I think it's what it is.
How often
it's like a
do you have to pay that?
fee. You pay that every 2 years. So when you get this license, it's good for 2 years, which is nice. Now, for example, my insurance comes up every year. My business license comes up every year. If your driver's license expires, they will email you and tell you, hey, this document's getting ready to expire. You need to upload a new one by date X. And they're pretty easy going. I will say, like, there was a couple times where I emailed, actually not this year, but the previous year, I put in my new insurance and they denied me. And I'm like, what? It's the same insurance I had last year as this year. I renewed the same policy. And he's like, well, we needed to state this now because we've had issues and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, ugh. And I got really mad at them. I really did. But it was my fault because I did not do my due diligence and look to see what changes were made. And it's simple enough to do, right? You just don't care. It's insurance. We're shop owners. We don't pay attention to it until we need it, and then we pray we have enough. I mean, it just seems to be the way we work. So it's every 2 years unless you have a document come up. So I can tell you right now, every February, I have to do my business license and my insurance. So I do it every February. And I have a new insurance guy this year, and when I got my email from NASTF, hey, your insurance is going to expire, I sent it to him and said, hey, I need this. And then he wrote to NASDF and said, here it is. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please call me. And I'll tell you what, that was the best way to do it, because when I uploaded the document, it was like, boom, approved. And then they denied my business license. And I was like, how'd you deny my business license? I was really dumb and picked the wrong year because I just save them, right? Sure. And I put the 2020 in the 2020 spot instead of the 2021 spot. And I was like, oh, that was my fault. So I was all annoyed until I realized I was an idiot. And then I was like, oh, okay. Because when they send you an email, it's so generic. It kind of annoys you. It's like, hey, we denied the following documents. And they just tell you out of this list what they denied. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did with the insurance. Was I talked to my insurance guy. I'm like, here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And can you help me out and figure out all this stuff that they need? Worked with him. He got the stuff set up and all of the particular things on the insurance document that need to be there. And then it worked. So that, like you said, that's definitely the way to go if you're trying to get the details worked out there.
Yeah, and then once you have it, like I switched insurances. So what I did was I had a copy of my entire policy, and so I sent it to my the guy who said, oh, I could probably get you a better deal on insurance. And he actually did. I couldn't believe it. Because, you hear that crap all the time. Oh, dude, I'll get you a better rate and better coverage. I'm like, yeah, right. No, the guy really did. So I sent him my entire policy and said, I need at least this or better. And then I said, if you're going to make any changes, you got to email NASDF and ask. And he said, nope, not going to make any changes. We're just going to increase some of your limits to give you better coverage. And so I don't know, maybe it's because he increased the limits that it helped. I have no idea, but this year it was like boom, boom. Or maybe he emailed them behind the scenes and I just don't know. Like, I'm good with that too. Whatever it took, it took. So, yeah, that's the biggest killer for people is the insurance. I'll tell you right now. Sure. It's everybody I know that's mobile hates the insurance part because it ain't cheap.
And I think some states it's more difficult than others to get it. I remember hearing Cody. He said he had a really difficult time with that end of it, just because they didn't understand what he was doing as a mobile technician.
That was my problem with my business license when I started. They didn't understand what I was doing, and so because in the state of Florida they have certain things they want in repair orders and da da da. And I'm like, but you don't understand, I'm not fixing the car. Like, it's falling under the shop's automotive repair license. I'm there consulting about what it needs done. And when I said that, the lady's like, oh, that's all you're doing? Oh, here you go. Thanks. Thanks for wasting our time. And I was like, oh, thanks. And, yeah. I mean, if I had to do that argument today, I'd be a little lost. I mean, I was a little lost when I did it, but I got it. And now that it's a renewal, it's just like, please renew. Here's my money. I mean, they don't even care what you're doing anymore once you have it. It's like, just send more money to the government.
So once you go through this whole process, you get all this stuff in line, you put it in, you pay your money, you get your VSP credential. What exactly are you using this for? And I'm sure there's lots of examples, but where would you
There are
use
lots,
this?
but I'll stick with. So if you're a Mercedes shop, you needed to order pretty much any Mercedes part because they're all theft-related parts, TRP. I actually have some shops who are like, hey, if I pay you some money, can you order a theft-related part for me? And I'm like, no, because I can't program it because I ain't buying the $50,000 stupid tool, so I ain't doing it. So for me, it mainly fell on Ford. So 2018 and plus Fords, if you want to do anything security, you gotta have your VSP. There's no more 10-minute waits, thank God. You just type in your login, do your parameter reset, key learns, done. It's kind of nice. The other one is Chrysler. Everybody and their brother was getting PIN codes from Chrysler, from the dealer. Oh man, I just buy the guy a pizza. He hands me a PIN code. Well, that worked great. And then Chrysler kind of caught on to this, and they decided to go to a rolling code system. And the way the code works is there's a 5-digit lifetime code in the car, which is why you get a 5-digit when you pull it with a key tool. But then when you're using YTech, it decides if you're using an aftermarket or dealer login. And then the logarithm to get the 4-digit 24-hour code varies if it's aftermarket or dealer. So if you have an aftermarket login and you're using a dealer PIN code, it just says, and it wigs out and it thinks you're dumb. So then you have to buy the PIN code through Tech Authority, which you can only do if you have your VSP. And of course, anytime you're using your VSP, you get the fun part of filling out all the paperwork afterwards, which is just a joy. But at least it's not like what it used to be. Again, SDRM 2.0 made it kind of nice. On SDRM 1.0, you used to have to keep a copy of all this paperwork in your truck all the time. And then you had to keep it for 7 years. And then at any point, NASTF could say, hey, we need to see this VIN number because you did a D1 form on it back in 2004. And you're like, it's 2020, man. That's 6 years ago. You really want me to go dig that up? And they do these random audit checks on you. And it was kind of like, eh. Well, now that it's all online, boom, you're done. You don't have to carry nothing. It's all on them. And they can check it as they want. So I love the new process compared to the old one. It did take some getting used to. Not going to lie. Like, it took some time getting used to, but now that we have it, I like it. And just so I'll go ahead and say it, the things you gotta have to fill out the D1 are the driver's license and the registration. I mean, you need that from every customer, and the problem is neither one of those documents can be expired. So you run into some issues, especially during COVID, where this government that issues all that crap is not open. And so there was a little bit of a sketchiness there for a while where I was like, I need to make a key and I need a key cut code. So, yep, you're getting an expired driver's license because this dude can't go for another 4 months. And I'll be honest, like, as much flack as NASTF takes sometimes, I tell you what, they were pretty lenient with that stuff. They would be like, oh, okay, yep, the government's closed. We can verify that, and I was like, sweet. So.
Well, I think you touched on an important point there is that for us to use the credential and pull a PIN code or do whatever you need to with this, the owner of the vehicle has to be present with us there, right?
No, they have to be present for the shop and give the shop the driver's license. The shop can make a copy of the driver's license. The registration in Florida is always in the car, so That's never an issue. So when I get there, I'm trusting that the driver's license the shop gave me is the owner. They match the picture to the owner, and then you have to make sure the name on the driver's license matches the registration. If it doesn't match, do not pass go, do not collect $200. It's just the way it is. And I run into some really odd problems here because we have people from like the islands where their daughter might be here, but they're over in Puerto Rico, but they own the car. And I'm like, well, we can't, this is not going to work. Like, you need to either transfer ownership of this car or he needs to come here. So we've had some interesting situations where, you know, the random China tool has bailed me out of a jam here and there.
Tools of questionable origin.
Yeah, tools of question. That was it. I couldn't think of how they worded it. Yeah, tools of questionable origin have bailed me out of a jam a couple times. But this isn't. I mean, we're joking and having fun, but this is something that kind of actually did not start off as what I think they thought it would start off as. I started looking into this, and NASTF was not about keys back in the day. It was about information. So they really were more focused on making sure that we as the aftermarket had the information we needed to fix the cars, which in today's terms, it's turned into security. Because I can tell you right now, if you go over to Australia and you're like, hey man, I need to program this key, I need this PIN code, or I need access to programming it, the only way you're doing it's EEPROM. I was at a locksmith event, and there's a guy from Australia, and he was wicked good with EEPROM. And I'm like, man, you are really good at soldering, desoldering, and seeing where the keys are. He's like, dude, this is the only way we do it in Australia. There's no onboard programming. There's no OBD programming. It's rip the theft module out, write the key in it, put the theft module back, and move on. And so I was like, every car? He's like, every car. And now they're starting to get into where Australia is now trying to pass laws so they can be more like the United States and have some of the functions that we have now, because that's what NASDF started years ago. So that's how far behind Australia is.
Okay. I mean, what was the real push though to, I'm trying to word this the right way.
Formalize it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I say formalize. I wish people could see my air quotes. Formalize it. So, you know, they started, and NASDF started in 1999 in Arizona. And it really started once IATN and information became more rampant and they realized they needed to be more formal. So they kind of saw these changes coming to become more formal and realized they needed to go that way. So I pulled this up in like the history of NASDF through some magazine thing I found. This is what it said. In 2006, industry leaders, the board members of the organization include representatives of the Automotive Service Association, ASA, Automotive Service Councils of California, ASCCA, Automotive Locksmiths of America, ALOA, the Equipment and Tool Institute, ETI, International Automotive Technicians Network, IATN, Global Automakers Association, Alliance of Automotive Manufacturers, AAM, National Automotive Dealers Association, NADA, Automotive Aftermarket Suppliers Association, AASA, Motor Information Systems, Pacific Technology Solutions, National Institute for Automotive Service and Excellence, ASE, voted to make NASDF a 501c3 to help them to complete the mission they all agreed on. And what mission did these leaders, which reading that list, that's like some of the biggest organizations still today, their mission was pretty simple. It was facilitate the identification and corrections of gaps in availability and accessibility of automotive service information, training, diagnostic tools and equipment, and communications to the automotive service professionals. So all them big groups of people, the ASA, AOLA, if you do anything with locks, you know ALOA. IATN's still pretty big. ETI is huge in tools. I mean, I've seen them, and we all have our ASEs. I mean, they all voted to make NASTF a formal 501c3. I mean, when we donate that money to NASTF, it's like it's a nonprofit. Like, they spend every penny they get, and they never carry any money over. I mean, their goal isn't to make $1 billion. Their goal is to help improve the industry, and they spend that money to improve the industry. So, I mean, for the little bit of budget they get, I feel like they've done some big things for us. I mean, I'm still excited I can program GM by OBD, and I ain't got to take the theft module out every time. I mean, I'm good with that.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I mean, the idea that they're there for information, I think it's working. I mean, we've had some other really interesting changes come up that not all those organizations agreed with. For example, ASA did not like the Right to Repair Act, Part 1 or Part 2. So it is interesting to see what the ASA likes and doesn't like and how they go about it. So
what issue did they have with
that later. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I just remember I know for Part 2, the Part 2 is dealing with more of the like IT side of the software, like, hey, you have the right to that software, and ASA is like, we're getting into like information technology stuff and IoT, Internet of Things, and self-driving and blah blah blah. Like, this I think it kind of stemmed back to when the Chrysler got hacked and the guy could drive it around the parking lot because he put a micropod in that had a virus on it. I mean, we all remember that on 2020. So I think they more kind of went, well, wait a minute, we already know people can drive these cars if they really wanted with throttle by wire, brake by wire. Well, now we have these sensors and radars and we're moving to autonomous vehicles. I don't think we really need to let people have as much information out of their car as they think they need. So they opposed it. And I know lots of my industry friends also opposed Part 2. Part 1 was a little more iffy. I opposed Part 1, but we'll talk about that later when we talk about some of the new changes NASDAQ made, because I think Part 1 was the can of worms that got opened that some people are complaining about, and I think we're going about complaining in the wrong way.
All right. Well, yeah, there is some new stuff happening with all of this, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you. I guess we can lead into that by starting with RAP programming and describing what that is, and that'll lead us to the next topic.
Okay. Yeah, RAP programming it's RAP is copyrighted and owned by Opus, who owns Drew Tech now, so I'll state that. So I'm using their definition, just so we don't get like, some kind of like cease and desist. We mentioned RAP. RAP is owned by Opus. RAP stands for Remote Access Programming, and what it is it's a Pelican knockoff case. It's got an IOTA battery charger in it, I think, or something like it, and it's got a Cardac 3 and a tablet in it. So it's got a thing that you plug the cable, you hook up jumper cables to, you plug it in, you put those jumper cables on the car, you hook up the OBD to the OBD port, and then you call up Opus and say, hey, I have this 2015 Ford F-150, I need to have somebody program the PCM. And they say, okay, we'll put you in our queue. You hang up the phone, you keep doing your brake job. However long later, 27 hours, who knows? I don't know. I don't have a RAP, so I don't know. I can make fun of them for having long wait times. I don't think it's really 27 hours. I think it's like 1 or 2. So, but 27 hours later, because it sounds good, for the mobile people. So they call you back and they say, okay, we need you to turn the key on, turn the key off, turn the key on. Okay, wait. Okay, it's programmed. Turn the key off, turn the key on. Okay, see if the car starts. All right, car starts. Thanks. Have a good day. Bye. Click. And you just spent $150. So you don't have to know anything about programming. All you have to know is how to follow some basic instructions and hook it up and have decent internet. Their tablet's kind of unique. It's got this special software on it where the one shop I know that has a wrap, I asked the guy to film when it was working, and he's like, "Why? It's just a black screen." He's right. Like, it comes on as soon as they remote in, boop, screen goes out, so you can't even see what they're doing. So it's not even like you could buy a wrap and then learn how to program from watching them do it 100 times. There's nothing there. But the biggest limitation to this has been LSID. And in case you missed it, it's because of earlier when I talked about going to that shop, I had to verify the driver's license and the registration, and I had to be present at that car. You can't share your VSP number. So if Sean, if you worked for me and I sent you to a car, I can't let you use my VSP number. You would have to be a subsidiary of my VSP. So I would be the main, you would be a sub account under me, but you would still have to have your own VSP. And then if you have a sub account, you got to have like $100,000 bond, which is stupid expensive. So I will never have any employees that have a VSP. And that's been the limitations of RAP. So they could program, let's say, a 2018 Ford PCM, but then they can't do the parameter reset to make the truck start. So now you paid them $150, but then got to turn around and pay a locksmith to come out and pay him $80. So it kind of almost didn't make sense in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the big problem with RAP. So,
I mean, okay, so is there any other remote programming services like that out there that can work or that can get past the LSID thing?
I mean, no. I mean, there's AirPro and Aztec, which they basically use a special device to emulate the factory tool. So if Aztec or AirPro would have a dealer login, say, and they had dealer access to get, for example, on Ford, if you're a Ford technician, when it brings up that screen, you've seen it, it says, are you a dealer tech or are you a NASTF person?
Sure.
And basically you just need to say, hey, I'm a dealer tech. You hit it and you log in and there's no D1. The problem is the dealers are self-audited. So the dealers get checked by their own OEMs to make sure their paperwork's in a row. Now, granted, the dealer's doing what? 1 million cars a year, if not more. So the chances of them getting picked on the one VIN may not matter. But if you're a company like Aztec and you're doing 100,000 cars, well, that might raise a red flag to Ford. Who knows? I mean, is there behind the scenes money there that may be buying them some privileges? We could speculate, but I mean, nobody can say anything for sure. I'm just going to assume they're following the rules and that they're at this current point in time with what we're talking about. No, there is no mobile programming that can do LSID stuff.
Okay, until we have something new, the Air.
Yeah, until something Air. Yeah, until this new thing Air. I feel like we have. Yeah, until Air was released. So what is Air, right? That's what we're gonna talk about. How fun is it? So AIR stands for Assisted Immobilizer Reprogramming. So basically, in a nutshell, this allows remote programmers, those not on site. So we're talking Aztec, AirPro, RAP, and they're not on site. So I'm in Florida, they're in really expensive New York, paying way too much in taxes. They're going to do it for me. Not on site, to be able to perform a VSP functions while not present. I want to make that very clear. They are now able to do a VSP function when they're not present. So of course, this becomes an interesting question, and I know what's coming because this was the first question I had. Well, wait a minute, how can they do that? Who holds the VSP then, right? Because a VSP is the only way, a vehicle security professional is the only way to get this access. So I dug into this a little and realized that the air service provider, so now you have to sign up with NASTF to be an air service provider. Currently, there's going to be 3. One of them's in Canada, so I don't care to even remember it. It's some small mobile company with 2 guys. The other one was in the United States, it's AirPro, which is really big in the collision world, so that kind of scares me. And then the other one is Opus, which I'm not surprised. I mean, DrewTech is the leading J2534 box maker, and they make the wrap. So, I mean, if you're going to run a gauntlet of tests, pick the 2 biggest names. I mean, you could argue that maybe Aztec is bigger than AirPro, but I don't know for sure. I'm not really that into them. So basically what happens is they have signed up to be an air service provider, which gives them some kind of special VSP. So now what happens is let's do a real life example. So Sean, you own a shop, right? We're just going to call it Sean's shop because
All right.
that's what everybody names their shop is after the first name, right? So you have this Ford come in and you're like, oh, look, it burned up coils. Shock and awe. Oh, it's going to need a PCM. Oh, this happens to be a 2016 Fusion, which needs an LSID because it started really early in Fords on certain cars. It always catches you off guard too. And so you go, oh, great. Well, I can't do the security function. Well, I'm going to put in an error request. So you put in an error request, and I'm going, hey, I'm near Sean's shop. I like Sean. Sean's a good guy. He always buys me pizza at the ATG class because they don't provide any food. And so I see you put in a request because I'm a service provider. And I call you up. I say, hey, Sean, I see you got this request. Can you send me over the documents? Because as the shop, you're still providing the same documents to the service provider. You're still providing the driver's license and the registration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm going to get those, verify that everything's correct on them. They're not expired. The name on the driver's license matches the registration, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm going to be able to use my VSP as the air service provider and get the information I need, whether it's buy a PIN code if we're doing a Chrysler or fill out that D1 and just do the Ford. So you're paying a fee for the air service provider. I believe it's $45 and it's for the first 5 times. And then I'm going to have to charge you another fee if there's a fee involved for me using my VSP. So if I have to buy a PIN code or whatever, you're going to pay a fee again because I have to buy that. So the difference here is you as the shop are not seeing any of that security information, which is why you don't need the VSP. So I want to make this clear. The shop that's requesting the air service sees no PIN code, no key codes, because oftentimes when you buy a PIN code, you get the key code with it.
Sure.
That shop is seeing none of this. It's all done in the background. So this brings up, I know you mentioned it, but I want to talk about it now because I feel this is important because I mentioned it earlier. We talked about how this industry is kind of like the second chance industry. And over the weekend, I will tell you, I was annoyed when I read this, and I was like, this is dumb. I was ticked. And then I sat down and I thought about it, and I had a buddy call me, and he goes, hey, you know what's funny? I said, what? He goes, oh, I'm really excited about air. I said, well, why would you be excited about this? And he's like, do you know I can't get my VSP because of something that happened when I was 18. The dude's 42. He did something stupid when he was 18, can't get a VSP. Well, he works on a bunch of Mercedes, and he's like, it's a big deal for me to get these Mercedes parts. Now with air, I can sign up for air and get these parts.
Okay.
I can't get my LSID, but I can get this. I can get these parts now. And, you know, I was like, okay, if we're all about truly bettering the industry, and I know some great shop owners who've screwed up in their lives. I mean, I think the more nuts you are, the better the technician you are. I got a buddy who's got 9 different profiles because he keeps getting kicked off of Facebook. I can't even keep track of which profile I'm supposed to message anymore when I have an Audi question. But hey, he doesn't have an LSID, and so he has a hard time with Otis and other things. So I see what they were saying when you read that long post from Donnie about how this could help tax. I get it. And there is a place for this industry. I mean, people tell me all the time, well, there's a place in the industry for giving free information away like we do on Facebook. Okay, well, this is the way to help bring those guys who screwed up equal to the other guy who didn't screw up, but yet that guy paid his price. Like, I just feel it's really bad to punish somebody twice. So to me, if that guy did his time in jail or whatever it is, paid his dues, and now he's working, he's trying to provide for his family, he's really changed his life around, to punish him twice to not be able to fix a car is just absurd.
Yeah.
I
100% agree.
That annoying. Right. So, I mean, okay. So that's kind of like my whole, like, okay, I get why we're doing this. And it's definitely something interesting. And I get this. Like, there's a lot of liability in this. I can see a lot of ways for this to go sideways, right? Like, to me, I can Photoshop anything if I take pictures of it. I mean, I could easily forge a driver's license and a registration and change the VIN and steal somebody's car. But let's face it, that's not an industry professional. I mean, if somebody's going through that amount of length to fill out an air request, right?
Yeah.
Call up Opus, waste their time to try to steal this car. I mean, they're going to use tools of questionable origins that are faster and better anyway, so who cares, right? Like, they're not going to do it. The other thing that's interesting about this, and it threw me through a loop, and I called a couple people who I know are on some boards, or I call them boards, but the NASTF has different sections, and you can sit in meetings and listen to what's coming up, and they're, I mean, if you have an LSID or you're a VSP, you can sit on any of them for free. I mean, I sit on the Security Council meetings all the time. Usually I'm half listening because I'm working on a car because they're in the middle of the afternoon, but they're interesting to listen to. I just totally lost my thought. That's what happens at 10
Dude, that
o'clock
happens to me all the time.
That's funny. I totally lost my thought. I want to go back in time and listen to myself.
I'll try to get us back on track here. Okay, so let me back up a step here real quick. So the person who's taking this information in at the shop, right? What credentials do they need to have to be qualified for this? Because I'm sure there's some sort of vetting process for that, right?
There is, and I'll tell you that I looked, didn't really see much.
Okay.
I know it's free to apply, and that's the part that kills me because I just paid my $400 to renew, and I'm like, why are they free? No, it's $400. It's not $475. It's $400. It's $399.99. So I'm like, that's annoying. Like, why do I have to pay $400 and go through all this paperwork every year? But they don't. And then I realized, oh yeah, because I could go in and look up any key code I want in America. Like, I can buy it, no problem. They can't. So the shop has to have one person who's kind of like the registered security air requester, right? So there's one guy at the shop who can request the services, and he, I don't know, just has a pulse. I say that jokingly because I really could not find anything. I'm assuming there's going to be some things brought up. I think we're talking about this so new that I couldn't find it. Or I just overlooked it and didn't realize that it was like a little list of credentials. But there is somebody there. And then the insurance is going to be the next one. Who has the insurance? Well, it's going to fall back on the VSP, right? Because if the car gets stolen, they're coming after the VSP. That's why we got to have all our paperwork. Because the OEMs, when a car is stolen, the first thing the police do is go, hey, did anybody make a key for this? And they check with the OEMs. And the OEMs go, oh, well, Matt over there programmed a key for this yesterday at 2:00. Well, guess who's coming over to find me real quick? The police. Hey, you programmed a key for this car yesterday at 2:00. It got stolen at 4. What happened? Oh, well, and let me be clear, because I missed this. Oh, this is what I was going for. I remember my thought. Key programming. There's no key programming or key origination with the air service. However, from the people I talked to on the different boards, so I was going to mention, if you do a BCM in a Ford, you have to program 2 keys in a newer BCM because that's the theft module.
Sure.
That key programming is considered programming, not key programming. Does that make sense? So, yes, they're programming keys, but they're not programming a new key to the car to start it and drive away. Those keys are already present.
Gotcha. Yeah, they're already cut.
So
to
they
the
can't
vehicle.
do add a key or all keys. Right. You can't do add a key or all keys lost, but you can program a key to finish a theft module. That's how I was explained, and that's from somebody who was pretty sure that's how he heard it in the security meeting, but we'll have to wait and find out. But I would believe that to be correct because that makes the most sense, right? I mean, what's the point of going through all this if I can't add the keys into the security module?
Right, yeah. So there's obviously some...
So glad I remember my thought.
Yeah, it's always a good feeling when you get back on track. You're just like, okay, that's where I was going with it.
I'm so excited right now. That's where I was going with it.
So there's some mobile technicians and people that run mobile businesses right now that are, I guess, a little hot about this change. People don't like change. So what's your perspective on that?
So I mean, my honest opinion is I don't like it. But I don't like it because I'm being selfish. I mean, I've gained some very big clients because Aztec refuses to do LSID stuff because of the paperwork involved. Despite having techs on the ground and being able to buy them VSPs, they're like, oh, we don't want to mess with it. So I gained 2 really big body shops because they couldn't do a Ford SRS module and a Ford blind spot module. Now, don't ask me why Ford decided to make the airbag module and the blind spot module an LSID thing, along with front radar. I dumbest idea ever, but whatever. It got me into that shop, and the shop's like, wait, you have this license? Yeah, because I do the Ford dealer, so I fill this out all the time. So then I was like, And the guy's like, oh, well, can you do this car too? Yeah, I can do that car. So I was there one day early in the morning. And he's like, oh, you can do this Honda, you can do this Toyota, oh, you can do this, yeah. Oh, do you do ADAS too? Yeah, I can do that. And he's like, well, why am I calling the other guy? I'll just keep calling you. So I kind of stole their job. I mean, I'm one guy, so I don't think it really affected the big company. But, I mean, I basically got the shop because I had this license. So now, if air would have been out, would I have gotten that call? Probably not. So is this going to affect mobile guys? Yeah. My other big complaint with this is the fee. It's only $45 for 5 times. So if I use it 1,000 times, I only paid $45 5 times. But I get that we're both paying for the key code and blah, blah, blah. And technically the 45 times 5 is more than what I pay for an LSID a year. But I'm like, really? If the shop uses it 100 times, they should be required to get an LSID. I mean, unless they just can't. But I think there should be a point where NASTF says, listen, man, you've used your air service like 1,000 times in 365 days. It's time for you to invest in your own. But there'll be stipulations, and I don't want a shop owner who can't get it to be penalized. But yeah, I would like to see maybe a fee a little more. And there's a lot of beef. The other thing some of those other guys are complaining about is, oh, well, they're just paying money. It's Opus bought their way in. And I'm like, well, you sit here and you complain about it, but are you on those meetings that happen every other month? I mean, there's a meeting with NASDAQ once a month. I mean, don't sit here and complain about something, but yet not be in the meetings. Like, if I can take my time as the only employee of my company to at least sit and listen to half the call, 2/3 the call. I was really glad to hear the Mercedes call. The way they changed the Mercedes TRP parts was brilliant. Had a rocky rollout, but it was brilliant. And so kind of streamlined it a little, messed some things up. I mean, it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. If you find the perfect organization, don't join it. You're going to mess it up. It's just how life is. But, I mean, if you're going to bash them and say, hey, let's not do this. This is dumb. Well, why weren't you on that meeting call? Why aren't you sitting on the board? Why don't you try to do something to help them? I mean, I started a J2534 group because I got sick of seeing all the programming questions in groups, and you got 50,000 wrong answers, and maybe 2 guys knew the right answer, and I was like, this is dumb. So me and another guy started the group together, and it's a small group. I keep it private, but it's easier to help maintain and keep the questions in, and it works. But that's just it. I mean, do I like this program 100%? No. Do I see some benefits to it? Yeah, I can see some benefits to it. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, we'll see how it's played. Do I feel like it's going to benefit the big dogs a little more than us? Sure. One of the things I'm kind of concerned about is actually a company nobody's going to dare think about. It's Alltel. I mean, Alltel comes out with these random tools all the time. It would almost take nothing for them to create a remote programming system, become an air service provider in 6 months, because they have to wait 6 months because they're going to run a test pilot for 6 months. Everybody's a freaking Alltel.
Sure.
Right? So if Alltel launches a mobile programming system, we're in big trouble. That could be the end-all be-all to programming if they execute it well. But I mentioned the Right to Repair Act. The real problem with this whole system actually starts from 2017 when the law was passed, or 2015, and now we're in 2018. And why does that matter? Well, let's think about it, right? So starting in 2018, your J2534 box has to emulate the factory tool, right? 100% OE functions. Now, Nissan decided. Now, one thing they left out, which is why we have Repair Act 2.0, is security. Right?
Okay.
So they decided the OEMs, if they put security in the module, they don't need to let that information out. That's considered a trade secret. Can't see my air quotes again. Trade secret. So that's why security is left out of Nissan's R2R. Okay, fine, dandy. Well, this kind of explains why Ford put security in random modules. They didn't want people messing with things they don't feel they should be messing with, right? ADOS is a big safety feature. They don't want you screwing with it if you don't really know what you're doing. So I think they kind of shoved security in there as the, hey, now you can't touch it because it's got security in it. Okay. So the problem is everybody who's complaining right now and is worried about jobs being stolen is worried about Opus, AirPro, Aztec, right? They're worried about these big 3 companies.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, we gave them the keys 3 years ago now when we passed the Right to Repair Act, and everybody jumped for joy. And these shop owners were praising the Right to Repair Act because it let them get service information and tools so much cheaper. Now I can buy a, $1,700 Cardac 3. I don't even know what it costs. And I can do all the OEMs with it. Where before, when I started in 2015, I had to buy a Nissan VCM. I had to buy a Ford VCM. I have an MDI-1. I have, the Chrysler Micropod. I have this. I have this. I have this. I have this. I have like 10 interfaces floating around my truck. I'm like, this is dumb. And I will say I got annoyed with it. But once I bit the pill and swallowed them and realized I could charge for them, it wasn't a big deal. So the problem becomes not what happened now. This was expected. If you didn't see this coming when they passed the Right to Repair Act, you're just crazy. Like, I knew this was coming the moment that passed. I've had conversations with people at Drew Tech, and I was like, so when you guys going to find a way to do the LSID remotely? Because it's a no-brainer at this point. So, I saw this coming. This wasn't like something that was going to not happen. And let's face it, there's not enough mobile technicians. There's not enough certified VSPs to go out and program every car and cover every shop.
Right.
Sure, I'm outside a major city. I'm not far from Orlando, but I can go from one side to Orlando to the other in an hour. How many shops did I miss? Can I cover everything? No. So do we need 100,000 mobile technicians? No. None of us would ever make any money, but at a certain point, there's a catch point. And then you throw back in the other shops that can't get an LSID, that maybe don't want a mobile guy, or there's not a mobile guy in their area, and it just becomes this like it's a cat and mouse game. I honestly think I will lose some business over this.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's inevitable. Every change equals some business loss.
Sure.
However, there's going to be the time it fails, going to be the time it doesn't work, going to be the time something goes sideways, and then I'm going to get the call. And it's about providing the customer service to your customer that matters. I had a shop that got suckered into an Aztec. Oh, it's going to be great. Da, 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 da. It didn't work the first 3 times they tried it. The dude shipped it back. He's like, I'm done. I'll just keep calling this mobile guy that takes 4 or 5 hours to get here. He's nice. He always shows up. Sometimes he yells and throws tools at me because I'm an idiot and wasted his time. But at least he shows up. I'm not always nice to some people. But, and I think that's the end game now, right? So we have to provide some kind of service and relationship to our customers. When I had COVID, it was probably my biggest fear of my life. I'm going to miss 2 weeks of work where I can't provide any service to these shops, and they're going to have to call somebody else. What if they call the other guy and he's better than me? What if they call the other guy and he's nicer than me? What if they call the other guy and he's nicer and better than me, and he looks good, right? I mean, it doesn't take much to beat my looks, but still. I was super nervous about it. And what's funny is I had COVID and I come out of the room for lunch or something, and I said, "Oh, after lunch, babe, I gotta go fix a car. It's in the driveway." She goes, "What do you mean it's in the driveway?" So I don't know. I said the other guy couldn't fix it. I feel fine, I'm just a little tired. I'm gonna go fix it in the driveway with my COVID. They said they didn't care, and they left me a little COVID like disinfectant spray. So when I got done, I just sprayed the disinfectant and I called them and they picked up the car. But I mean, I was genuinely scared for nothing. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
And those 2 big shops that I got from Aztec and another mobile company that don't want to do LSIDs, they called him back out. And the one guy's like, "Oh, why haven't I been here?" And he's like, "Oh, we're using this like really small guy. He's nice, and I have relationships with him. I buy him lunch once in a while. We hang out. I ask him how their kids are doing, right?" There's a genuine relationship there that you can't get with a mobile company. So
Right.
I think this is going to affect the industry, and it's going to make getting new shops harder. But I don't think this is the end of the world like some of these people say it is.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is I've been, to a lot of shops around me, doing some marketing and stuff, and hey, do you need programming services or whatever? And I think I've only run into 1 or 2 shops that even have a RAP system, as of right now. And so it's not super commonplace to have that in the first place. But like you said, that personal relationship that you have with them, it really makes a difference when you get in with technicians and the shop owners. And heck, maybe you screw something up one time. I mean, obviously I do that all the time. Like I'll just make a bad call or I'll brick a module and it just looks, I feel like an idiot. I'm like, these people are never going to call me again, but I've been working with them for a while. And then I get another phone call from them. I'm like, okay, cool. They want me to come back and they keep using me. I built that relationship with them, right? That, that I'm going to show up, I'm going to do everything I can for you. I'm going to help you out where I can. And that makes the difference. But like you said, you can't get that from a big company. It's not going to happen.
And there's tools of questionable origin that have this thing called SOD, right? Support on demand. And you can have somebody remote in and program your Volkswagen. And it's like, wait a minute, you're complaining about VSP rights, yet you're using your Gecko license on a car that you have not seen. You've had no proof of ownership, no proof of registration, and you're going to do whatever that guy requested? I'm confused because the whole point of this is to lock things down and to keep it safer. I mean, it just kind of cracks me up. It's like, if you're going to condemn one tool and make money, or or blame NASDF for this, but yet make money off using another tool because you pay for this Volkswagen or Audi license, and you're doing this support on demand system, but yet you're not verifying all that owner's information, then why are you upset? Because they're going to maybe steal a little bit of money from you? Okay. Like, that's business. You can't win them all. I don't know. It just kind of got to me this weekend when I was talking to some people about this, and I was just like, what are you upset about? Did you sit on the meetings? Like, and that's what gets me. Like, if you're not, this is a big thing with me. Don't sit here and complain about something without having a possible solution to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't like NASDF's idea of, you only pay 5 times. I'd say you should pay every time. But there's probably a reason they said 5 times. And if you read the report, it said that in their test program, which has been 2 to 3 years or something crazy, most shops didn't use it more than 5 times. Okay, fine. But the same guys complaining about the programming loss they're going to have are going to be the same guys who say, over-the-air updates are never going to work, right? I can't believe vehicles haven't gone to over-the-air updates yet. I haven't plugged my iPhone in to update it in 3 years, other than when I got my new phone and I had to do a manual backup. My wife's new 2020 Explorer, I will say I'm a little nervous to hit the sync update button just because I've bricked enough syncs in my lifetime to but I think this weekend I'm going to park it next to my house, because you can use your house Wi-Fi so you can increase the download speed instead of using their little 5G it comes with, or 4G or whatever it is. So I think I'm going to pull it up next to my daughter's room, let it down. I mean, it does it with the car running, so the battery won't go dead.
Sure.
So you download it, and then it installs. And I'm like, kind of want to try this. I mean, Chrysler's been doing it for a while. I mean, at what point are you going to be okay with change in the industry? And that's been my thing this weekend. Can I accept this change? Because if Alltel decides to make a wrap programmer, I'm telling you, are people just going to boycott Alltel? I'm never buying another Alltel. Well, that ain't going to happen, right? But NASDAQ makes one small change, and it's, oh my gosh, we got to abandon this ship. And it's like, I see bigger changes coming than this.
Yeah.
I mean,
one of my former students he works for Tesla, and he was telling me about some of the stuff that they do, how he does most of his work from a laptop, not at the car, right? And then updating and going through the programming and finding issues with the software and all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I don't even go to the car. It's just all over the air. And that is how it's going to be eventually at some point or another. It has to.
Right. Let's face it, right? So we're going to EV cars, right? We got this new great Democratic president, Congress, and Senate. EV's here to stay now, at least for 2 years. And if the Republicans win one or both of the houses in 2 years, then maybe we'll be back to gasoline and burning dead dinosaurs. But for right now, EV's here to stay.
Yep.
But with EV comes a lot of changes. And what people really want with EV is self-driving. But I think that's going to change, right? Because we have a lot of shops who aren't doing ADAS correctly, and we can have another podcast on that for another day. But, for example, Toyota says if you do alignment, you have to do these calibrations. How many shops are letting that go, right? So once we hit this level 3 car where it's got a geofence system in it and it can basically kind of drive itself, level 4 or really less inputs, level 5, screw it, you don't need a steering wheel and a gas pedal. What are we going to be fixing on these cars? Just changing brakes and tires and then replacing the part that got a code? I mean, these changes are coming, and we have to either start to look at it and go, okay, what am I going to do differently, or just complain about it. And I don't know. I'm not the most loved guy in the automotive industry. But at the same time, I'm looking at this going, I'll be 34 in May, and what am I going to do with this if I stay in this for another 10 or 15 years? I mean, GM, Ford has all announced no more gasoline engines come 2035. Done. That's a big change.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
it's 8 of my courses that I teach are centralized around the internal combustion engine. So I'm like, boy, I'm going to have to really change up or we have to completely change the structure of our program. I mean, obviously, the gas engine is going to be around for a while, but yeah, you got to start thinking about that stuff it's all going to be completely different 30 years from now.
Yeah. And one of the things I've seen since the Right to Repair Act, to kind of get back on topic, the mobile programming world, and you probably see this, once you're in it, you realize that everybody and their brother thinks they can be a mobile diagnostic guy. It doesn't work. It's like saying everybody should be a shop owner. It doesn't work. I mean, we've got good shop owners. We've got okay shop owners. We've got shop owners that are so terrible, you're like, please just die and go away now. And then we got shop owners that are just terrible. So, I mean, this is like one of them things where it might weed out some shops. Maybe. I mean, the nice part about this is if they call for a air program, right? And the wrap program's that module, well, there's nobody there to diagnose it. So now they've not only ate the module, now they've ate the programming fee, and they've still got nobody there to diagnose it. So maybe after losing $1,200-$1,400 and the mobile programmer guy who's also good at diagnosing isn't there to go, well, for $200 I'll diagnose it and tell you why you screwed up. You eat $2,000 or $3,000 worth of them calls. Maybe you just won't take them, which would help improve the industry in my mind, because now we're not wasting customers' money and time and parts. Or it just causes the shop to say, hey, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Close up. Because not all shops should be here.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, I could see some really good things with this. And again, I mean, I see bad, I see good. I'm just going to let it roll and see what happens. You're not changing it at this point. This ball is rolling downhill with full steam. Mm-hmm. You're not stopping it.
Yeah, you gotta adapt. I mean, that's really all. I mean, there's obviously but always changes in the automotive industry. Like, even just on the car itself, it's going to change. It's going to change. We got to change with it. We got to adapt, and that's just how it's always been for me, anyways. Is what's new? What do I got to figure out tomorrow that I don't know right now?
I mean, when I started on cars, we still had distributors in them. And I remember getting a scanner to turn the GM distributor to get it plus or minus 2 degrees so you get the stupid code out. I mean, and then we went to no distributors, and I was like, oh, great, no more cap and rotor sales. That sucks. Oh, no more wire sales. That sucks. But it hasn't really hurt anything. I mean, it's kind of nice. And granted, I opened the hood in my wife's 2020 Explorer ST and went, good Lord, there's a bunch of crap underneath there. Close the hood and be like, praise God for a warranty. And then I walked away. I mean, but you have to take these changes. And sure, I'm sure there's things Donnie didn't do right in this. I'm sure NASTF didn't do things right in this. But overall, they're doing something. I mean, would I have rather them not have spent the amount of time they spent on this and get me information for Nissan? Yes, because if I have to mail Tweedle one more time for a freaking airbag file, I'm going to go insane. Because you never know. I tell my shops, I'm going to email them. When are you going to get it back? 6 hours to 96 hours. We'll just see how the guy is feeling that day. I mean, it's just that kind of stuff drives me nuts. And, And then, that's where NASDAQ really comes in, right? So you can put a SIR complaint in, and NASDAQ looks into it, and they ask the OEM, hey, what's going on? Well, the problem is the OEM's answer is correct. Well, they can get the information if they email us, but the problem is well, that's great, but I want it now. I'm at this car now. I don't want to drive back out here. I want it now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, And to me, the Right to Repair Act left a lot out, right? Like Nissan, they have their own service information and repair system. The name totally escapes my mind right now. It's going to come to me in 5 minutes. But we can't get that in the aftermarket. Oh, Assist. Nissan Assist. That's it. See?
Okay.
You can't get Assist in the aftermarket. However, if I had Assist, I wouldn't need their Nissan airbag files. If I had Assist, it wouldn't there's times when I wouldn't be emailing Twiddle going, hey man, what transmission file goes in this thing, or what ECM file goes in this?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's 1,000 choices when you get that blank module. I mean, there's other things I would rather NASTF push. However, you can only push so far on the OEMs before the OEMs may lock you out completely. I mean, Mercedes, the only state that you can buy a key code in is California because they have different laws than anybody else.
Okay.
There's some European countries that when that dealer puts in a key code request
Mm-hmm.
to cut a key, the key code is sent to the key machine. They stick the blade in it and hit cut. Nobody ever sees the key code because of their laws and their antitrust systems, and they don't want cars stolen because stolen cars is a big problem.
Sure.
But I think that this was a decent solution, maybe not the best one, but I don't have any other way to do what they need to do. So, I mean, I'm not going to knock it because I don't have a better idea. Well, okay, I'll kind of knock it, but I'll give them credit for coming up with a solution in a rock and a hard place. I mean, if they did nothing, people who can't get an LSID get screwed. If they do something, anybody who's a mobile programmer thinks they're being screwed, and it's all about, oh, big business is buying their way in because they sit on all the boards, da-da-da-da. Well, you know what? Take 2 hours, sit on the boards, and put your complaints in. Because once the ball's in motion, you ain't stopping it.
Yep.
I mean, it's like Juggernaut for Xbox. Once he's going, baby. Ain't no stopping him unless you're that kid with the magical powers that just causes him to like bounce off the wall. I watched those the other day while I was working on a project. So.
Oh yeah, was it? Yeah, Hugh Jackman, Wolverine. Those were some good flicks there.
Those are the best.
Yep.
And they're like pre. Like I'm not a hardcore like blood guts gore kind of guy, which is kind of surprising. Unless it's like a historic horror movie like Saving Private Ryan, I'm okay for it. But like if it was like Wolverine like just dicing people up and blood everywhere like the Saw movies, I'm like, oh, these are terrible. I don't care. But if it's like, you know, I like the older X-Men because there's like, I call it Disney friendly, right?
Yeah.
I get stabbed, but there's no blood. I'm like, yeah, I like that movie.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to cover on this?
I'm looking over what we talked about before. I think we covered almost all of it. Yeah. This is really going to be interesting to see how it changes things. I think there's some people blowing this way out of the water. And it's not going to be a big deal. I don't know. It's funny. I've been taking some stock trading courses, and the guy has a saying. Yeah, the guy has a saying. He says every reaction is an overreaction, and so he's like, if bad news comes out, just buy the dip. It's going to go back up like 4 or 5 percentage points. And I'm like, this guy's an idiot. Why would you overreact? Don't you do your due diligence? No, he's right. They have a big sell-off, and then like next day it jumps up like 4 or 5%. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. So I think the automotive industry is the same way. And I was, man.
Sure.
I called the guy on Friday, and I was livid after I made my post about it. And he's like, you just need to calm down and think about this. And then when one of the guys called me and said he couldn't get a VSP and he's super excited about this, and I'm friends with that guy, and he's like, man, this is really going to help my shop out and be able to do more, da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. That's a valid point. Like, why do we have Facebook groups trying to help and teach people, but yet we're not willing to let the guy grow his business because he did something stupid? Like, you can't have it both ways, so. I definitely think we're overreacting right now. I'm not saying this is all cupcakes and rainbows. Don't get me wrong. I'm very much expecting to lose some sales over this, and I will probably be yelling at NASDF as I lose sales over it. But it's I felt it was inevitable. Like, this had to come up at some point. I mean, I wish it would happen like 5 years from now when I'm like way more comfortable in my business. You know, have more money sitting in the bank because we didn't just go through a pandemic. Still, I mean, it is what it is. I can't change it.
That's right. Just got to roll with the punches. Well, hey, one thing I want to say to you, honestly, is thank you for the work that you are putting in. Honestly, I mean, you do a ton, and you do a ton that people don't see. And I mean, stuff like you donated the the scope to my students, which is awesome. And you do a ton of work for this industry. And I just want everybody to know that that's listening. And so I want to give a big thank you to you. I mean, not only for coming on here and talking about this stuff, I mean, we're kind of just BSing here, but just all the work that you put in. Honestly, it's a big deal. And I want people to know that.
Well, you're welcome. I'm hoping your students enjoy the scope. We'll definitely try to keep that tradition going. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got lucky. I do a lot, and I reached out to somebody, and he gave me a helping hand over the weekend with some paperwork I hate doing. And so when you said, "Hey, let's talk about this," I'm like, I initially read your text and was like, "No, I don't have time to sit here and research this." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I do," because this other guy offered to help me with my paperwork. So now I have like a bunch of free time. So I was super excited. So yep, there's some people in this industry who help me, so I try to help back, and hopefully some kid younger than me in your class will be like, "Man, I got this scope from some nobody, and now that I'm doing good, I want to give back." So the guy who helps me says you always got to pay it forward. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm hoping that by helping your students out, the next generation can help out the next generation, and we can keep it going. I mean, you never know what happens in the future, and we're always going to have cars, maybe. I don't know. If they come up with flying vehicles soon, I'll be pretty stoked because I'll be able to travel faster, but I'll be like, yeah, I don't know if I want to work on that.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to do the ADAS calibration on a flying car.
I just don't want to work on flying. Have you ever been to an airport mechanic and seen their rules?
Well, I've worked with a couple Air Force mechanics and heard of all the stuff they got to do. They put wire ties on everything and all that stuff.
And every tool has a place, and it's all going to be checked in, checked out. You got to make sure you didn't leave anything in there. I mean, I lose a 10 millimeter socket every time I pull one out. I mean, I can't afford to
It's
be
flashlights for me. I am just so terrible with flashlights. So I just bought a bunch of them off Amazon. I'm like, I don't even want an expensive one. I'm just gonna have 5 in my truck. I know I'm gonna get rid of these in a vehicle somewhere.
So I used to be just like you, and I finally broke down and bought like the $150 LED ultra bright stream light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still got that sucker because it was so expensive.
Yeah, no, my Streamlight I had from when I was a Firestone tech is under an express fan somewhere on the frame. It's gone. So that's when I said, nope, I'm just buying cheap ones.
That's fine. Actually, my newest thing now is I'll send you a link. I think it's a Coast headlamp.
Okay.
And
sure.
so it goes on your head, right? And
you can't lose that, I guess.
can't leave it anywhere. It's rechargeable. It's bright. Like, oh, it's great. So, all right, you got anything else or any other questions or?
I think that'll do it. This was great.
Yeah, this was fun. Yeah.
All right. One more big thank you to Matt for coming on the show today. And I also want to thank everybody for listening. Hopefully you're enjoying the show and getting something out of the content. But other than that, let's get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.